Hey everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Daniel Hickson and I like to talk about classic Christianity on YouTube, the old faith. And today I want to do something a little different. I want to share my hopes as a Protestant, a Reformed Catholic Christian and minister, my hopes for the next Pope. As you, I'm sure, know, the Roman Catholic Cardinals are meeting in Conclave in the coming days to select a new Pope after the death of Pope Francis. And of course, I think the last time this happened was in 2013. I believe that's when Francis was elected, when Pope Benedict retired. I can remember when Pope Benedict was elected because I was in seminary, and it was the first papal election in my lifetime. I believe at that point, John Paul II had been Pope for so long. There's a great movie, by the way, called The Shoes of the Fisherman, and starring Anthony Quinn. It's an older movie, and it's about a Roman Catholic archbishop who was like a political prisoner in the Soviet Union, who gets out, and then the Pope dies, and then he gets elected Pope. And he's kind of almost like, in some ways, a precursor to Pope Francis, I think. I mean, he's kind of like 1960 whatever Hollywood idea of a great pope. It's an interesting movie. It does go through, I believe with some accuracy, just the process of what the conclave is like and the papal selection and everything, as sort of part of the movie. Anyhow, my Roman Catholic friends could tell me if that movie's totally terrible and inaccurate in every way. Just put that in the comments and I'll know not to say that again. Anyway, what are my hopes for the next Pope? First and foremost, I think the most important thing is declaring Christ as the one hope for our very confused and fractured world. I hope for a Pope who can, with clarity, speak to people about how it is that the gospel of Jesus Christ and the message of the Christian faith, which is Jesus, speaks to our needs, speaks to our yearnings, speaks to our desires in this time of sort of cultural upheaval, and does that in a way that's deeply rooted but also clear. So that's my first biggest thing, right? I also hope for a kind of honest ecumenism with other Christian churches and other Christian bodies. I would love to see greater unity between the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox churches. And I know there are some significant and deeply rooted stumbling blocks, but I think in the 20th century, a lot of really good progress was made in that direction. And I would like to see kind of that progress get going again. And I know there's some new fractures that have been introduced, both among Roman Catholics, which I'll talk about in a moment, but also among Eastern Orthodox churches, just like there have been in other communions, like the Anglican Communion, in the last couple of decades. But I would love to see greater unity within these groups, but also greater conversation between them. And I'd love to see, and Pope John Paul did some of this, Pope Benedict did a lot of this, some honest ecumenism, especially between Rome and the Lutheran churches and the Anglican churches. And I say honest ecumenism because I think, and this is a critique of Pope Francis, I suppose, there was a famous incident where he's basically told a Lutheran, I think it was a Lutheran woman, I'm going to get this wrong, so basically it was a question about a couple, one of them was Catholic, one was Lutheran, and could they receive communion together? And Pope Francis was kind of like, maybe so. And, well, that's not the official teaching of the Roman Catholic Church, so I think that's not the kind of ecumenism we really need. We need something that's going to be true across the board and not a kind of ad hoc thing. I would love to see a formal recognition of Anglican orders from the Vatican. And of course, at the end of the 19th century, Pope, I think, Leo XIII, could have that wrong, in his document Apostolicae Curiae declared Anglican orders to be completely null and void. I think it has been well demonstrated that even though that document is supposedly infallible, or at least the declaration at the end of the document, it does actually contain some historical inaccuracies and some problems with the logic that the Pope puts forward in that document. But even still, even if you grant that Pope Leo was correct about that, uh, Anglican orders and Anglican bishops have had Eastern Orthodox and Old Catholic bishops participate in their consecrations in the 20th century, so that there are lines of succession and clergy orders that the Roman Catholic Church does consider valid that have been basically injected into Anglicanism. And even the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops recently had a document saying we have to take Anglican orders on kind of a case-by-case basis. We can't just say, in general terms, that Anglican orders are all invalid. We have to take it on a case-by-case basis. So I'd like to see some more work around that at the highest levels in Roman Catholicism. I'd like to see a formal recognition of Anglican orders as valid. And I think there's an easy way for them to do that, basically, without having to overturn apostolic curiae, although I think maybe that should be done as well in a perfect world. And so I'd love to see a pope who has that ecumenical spirit and really understands himself to be a servant of unity among all Christians. Another thing I'd like to see from the next Roman Catholic pope is someone who will promote unity within Roman Catholicism. And I think it's not a secret. I've heard secular journalists even saying this, that the Roman Catholic Church is probably more divided now than it was in 2013 when Pope Francis came in. And I think just this is me, outsider, Protestant, Anglican, looking in. It seems to me that Pope Francis has contributed to that division. It's not all him, certainly, but he has made some statements and some moves that were not helpful. He has made a number of statements that have given rise to confusion about what does the Roman Catholic Church actually believe and actually teach. Even recently, made a statement about all religions are paths to God and are intended as gifts from God. And it's like, that is not what Vatican II says, and it certainly is not what all of previous centuries of Roman Catholic teaching said. And so, there were some Roman Catholics who wanted to hear something like that, and other Roman Catholics who said that's not right. And this kind of confusion creates division. And I think to have honest ecumenical dialogue, again, you shouldn't be fudging on what your church actually teaches in order to be sort of nice to people. You should say, okay, this really is what we teach, and this really is what you teach, and this really is where we differ, and let's see if we can work towards some consensus. So I think clarity about what the Roman Catholic Church teaches, I think, would be helpful, both for the ecumenical dialogue, but also for unity within Roman Catholicism. I personally have some friends who attend a traditional Latin Mass community, and I know the Pope Francis has kind of clamped down on the traditional Latin Mass. Pope Benedict basically gave broader permission for it to take place, and Pope Francis has kind of backed that off. And as I understand, a lot of TLM communities are growing and thriving and bringing in lots of young people. And so that's curious to me. And this, as a Protestant, and especially as an Anglican, is kind of, complex. One of the things we wanted at the time of the Reformation was the worship service to be in the language of the people and not in Latin that nobody understood. It wasn't an animus against Latin. It was just a desire that the people would understand what was going on. And so I think for many people who go from a Novus Ordo English Mass in the Roman Catholic Church, and then they start going to a traditional Latin Mass, they do understand what's going on. They do understand what's being said, even if they don't know every single word. They know, okay, this is that part of the service, and this is how it is in English. So I don't think what Pope Francis is doing is necessarily guided by the same motivations as what the Protestant reformers were trying to do. It looks to me like it's animated by a suspicion that Pope Francis had toward more traditional-minded Roman Catholics. I mean, it's, again, no secret. This is a matter of public record. Francis made many, many, many statements of, we'll say, very harsh critique of more traditional-minded Roman Catholics. And again, I think that's one of the ways he may have contributed to division. And some of those critiques may have been fair. He does seem to have had some suspicion towards just traditionalists in general. And I think from where I'm sitting, it looks like that was a reason for wanting to limit the traditional Latin Mass. Could be wrong, but that's just what it looks like to me. But all that to say, I have friends who are in these communities and who have felt alienated from their pope, which is an interesting thing since he is supposed to be the source of unity for Roman Catholics. One thing where I'll say some complimentary things about Pope Francis. He did try to set the tone in the sense of pursuing greater simplicity and less ostentation in how he conducted his ministry, and like where he lived in a kind of simple apartment or whatever, and kind of eschewing some of the luxury that developed in the late Middle Ages, which Protestants were also critical of. And I think that was actually a good thing. I know some traditionalist Roman Catholics felt like the Pope was throwing off the sort of cultural and artistic heritage of the church. And I do think that's actually a legitimate concern. You don't want to just throw away artistic treasures. You want to use them in a way that's proper. But I also think living with simplicity, trying to honor the office without being sort of self-aggrandizing, I guess. And of course, you can do that the other way around. Like, look at how humble I am, and a kind of reverse psychology self-aggrandizement is also possible. But I think Pope Francis really was trying to have a kind of a focus on simplicity, and I think that was a good thing. And I hope that we'll see that continue with the next Pope as well. So just a random few thoughts about my hopes for the next Pope. I certainly am praying for Conclave, that it will be somebody who will further the cause of Christ, the spread of the gospel, the unity of the church, the saving of souls, and the renewal of Western civilization. That's what I think the Pope really can contribute a lot toward. It's a funny thing, in Anglicanism, some of the Protestant confessions that came out of the 16th century say things like the Pope is Antichrist or something like that. The Articles of Religion of Anglicanism do not say that. They simply say that the Bishop of Rome and the Church of Rome have erred, like other ancient churches, that there are errors, but we do see, let's put it this way, we do see the Pope as the legitimate Bishop of Rome and the Roman Church as a real church that just needs further reform. And I think it's even fair to say, it's just a fact, that the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, is the most important Christian leader in the world. And you can argue about whether that is by design or the hand of providence or whatever, but it simply is the fact. It is the case that the Pope, when the Pope speaks, people listen in a way that is not necessarily true of your local bishop. It reverberates around the world. And so I think the Pope really can do a lot of good or harm. And I'm praying for a Pope who will do a lot of good for the church in the coming years.